Have you ever had one of those days, or maybe weeks, where it feels like your body's engine is just running on empty? Well, it's a feeling a lot of people know. And sometimes, the real culprit is a tiny little gland in your neck. Today, we're going to dive into hypothyroidism, a really common condition where this master regulator basically slows everything down, and it can affect how you feel every single day.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with what hypothyroidism actually is. Then we're going to play detective and figure out where the problem starts. Is it the gland or is it the brain? After that, we'll look at the usual suspects, the most common causes. Then we'll cover the telltale signs of this body slowdown, and finally, wrap up with the surprisingly simple path to getting a diagnosis.
So let me ask you this. Do you ever find yourself constantly cold when everyone else feels fine? Or maybe just hit with a wave of exhaustion that you can't explain? If that sounds familiar, you're tapping into the exact feelings that millions of people with hypothyroidism deal with, day in and day out.
Okay, so what is this thing really? The easiest way to think about your thyroid gland is like it's the thermostat for your entire body. It controls your metabolism, which is basically the speed at which all your cells get their work done. Now, with hypothyroidism, that thermostat is set way too low, and as you can imagine, everything just starts to slow down.
So, to put it a little more formally, hypothyroidism just means your thyroid gland isn't making enough of two absolutely critical hormones, known as T3 and T4. When the levels of these hormones drop, your whole metabolic rate tanks. It's kind of like the body's entire economy slipping into a recession. But here's where it gets really interesting. A slow thyroid isn't always the thyroid's fault. Yeah, really. To figure out what's actually going on, doctors have to determine if the issue is with the factory, the gland itself, or with the control center up in the brain.
And that brings us to the two main types. First, you've got primary hypothyroidism. This is when the thyroid gland itself is the problem. It's damaged or just failing. The brain is basically yelling at it to get to work, but the gland just can't keep up. On the flip side, you have secondary hypothyroidism. In this case, the thyroid gland is perfectly fine. The problem is the pituitary gland in the brain isn't sending out the get-to-work memo, which is a hormone called TSH. So, how in the world do you tell the difference? Well, it's actually pretty simple. It all comes down to a blood test. Let's look at the table. In primary hypothyroidism, your brain senses that your thyroid hormone, T4, is low. So what does it do? It panics. It starts pumping out tons of that signal hormone, TSH, trying to kick the thyroid into gear. So you end up with a high TSH and a low T4. But in secondary hypothyroidism, the brain isn't sending the signal in the first place. So both the signal, TSH, and the hormone, T4, are low. See the difference? It's a really clever diagnostic clue.
All right, so now that we know what's happening, the next logical question is why? Let's investigate the usual suspects. Because the cause can be completely different depending on where you live. On a global scale, the number one culprit is surprisingly simple: not getting enough iodine in your diet. See, iodine is an essential building block for thyroid hormones. If you don't have the raw materials, your thyroid can't manufacture the product. It's a huge public health issue in many parts of the world. But in countries like the United States, where we've had iodized salt for a century, that deficiency is pretty rare. Here, the leading cause is something totally different, an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This is basically a case of friendly fire. The body's own immune system gets confused and creates these antibodies that just attack and slowly destroy the thyroid gland. So because your thyroid hormone literally affects almost every single cell in your body, the symptoms of it running low are incredibly widespread. They can be really subtle at first, almost like a series of little warning lights flickering on your body's dashboard one by one. The first, and maybe the most classic, group of symptoms comes directly from that slowing metabolism we've been talking about. This is where you really start to feel that engine sputtering. So what does a slower metabolism actually feel like in your day-to-day life? Well, for starters, your body isn't burning fuel as efficiently, which can lead to weight gain even if you haven't changed your diet. It's also not producing as much heat, which is why people with hypothyroidism are famous for being cold all the time. And of course, everything slows right down, from your energy levels, causing that deep fatigue, to even your digestive system, which can lead to constipation. And it's not just about how you feel on the inside. That slowdown can cause some pretty noticeable physical and even neurological changes. I'm talking about things that affect everything from your skin right down to your reflexes. For example, you might notice your skin getting really dry, or your hair becoming brittle and even falling out. A really classic sign is a unique kind of puffiness, especially around the eyes, called myxedema. It's caused by these molecules building up under the skin. And even your nervous system gets sluggish, leading to slower reflexes. It is a true top-to-bottom, system-wide slowdown.
Okay, so after hearing all of that, you might be a little concerned. But I have some really good news. Even though the symptoms are all over the place, diagnosing and managing hypothyroidism is usually very, very straightforward. Think of it like a mechanic just plugging a computer into your car to run a quick diagnostic. The whole process is incredibly clear. It all begins with just having a conversation with your doctor about your symptoms. Based on that, they'll order a simple blood test to check your TSH and your free T4 levels. And as we saw earlier, those two numbers give a crystal clear picture of what's going on and point directly to a diagnosis. No guesswork involved. And the treatment? It's just as direct. The gold standard is a daily pill called levothyroxine. It's nothing more than a synthetic version of that T4 hormone your body isn't making enough of. It's really just a way of topping off the tank every morning so your body's engine can get back up to full speed. So could it be that this tiny butterfly-shaped gland sitting right in your neck holds the key to how you feel every single day? It's a pretty powerful thought, isn't it? And it's an amazing reminder of just how interconnected our bodies are and how one small imbalance can make a world of difference in our lives.